If you're thinking about starting a solo podcast, but you're worried that you might ramble too much and maybe no one will care, and do you even know what mic to use? This video is for you. As someone who helps people launch incredible podcasts that are actually more like movements, I am here to help you do the same. And if you're new here, welcome. My name's Hiwote. I'm a podcast producer and the creator of the Emerging Voices Podcasting Accelerator. And if you're wondering what the hell is that, that is a space where I help bold beginners create podcasts that are meaningful, magnetic, and deeply personal. So if you're someone who's been thinking about starting a podcast that you hope to leverage into your thought leadership and maybe even make some money from it down the line, then Emerging Voices might be an interesting fit for you, and you can actually book a free discovery call with me using the link in the show description below, okay? And if you're wondering, what shows have you made? What makes you such an expert? Here are some of the shows that I have produced. Some of my favorites are Where Should We Begin with Esther Perel. It used to be my favorite even before I started working on it. And then This Is Dating was listed as one of Time Magazine's best podcasts of 2022. And I just feel so proud of that, still, 3 years later. And today I'm covering everything that you need to know to create your solo podcast. Let's go. Here is something I don't think enough people spend time thinking through. You might be wanting to start a solo podcast because you feel like it should be easier in theory, or you don't really want to spend time coordinating interviews, or maybe you don't like doing interviews. But is the solo format the correct container for your idea? Are you able to explore the concept and go deep in the ways that you want to if you are doing it alone? And I'm saying that because for some of you, it might require doing a ton of research for your podcast to actually have the level of depth that you want it to, when you could have just spoken to an expert and made that the podcast. And this is not me steering you away from creating a solo podcast. It's just asking you whether you're super clear on why you are making a solo podcast in the first place, okay? So some of the questions I would be asking myself are, would I genuinely enjoy recording something solo over and over again? Essentially, you're talking to your computer over and over again. Would you actually enjoy that? And can you commit to doing it consistently? And if you've been here long enough, you know that consistently doesn't mean a million episodes, but can you actually see a season of this podcast coming to life where it's just you solo? Or, and this is a really important question to ask yourself, are you open to bringing in people, guests, other voices, a co-host, when it makes sense for the topic that you're exploring in a specific episode? So these are 3 questions I would really encourage you to ask yourself before you dive into the deep end of actually setting out to create a solo podcast. One podcast that I really like that does solo podcasting well without being afraid to have guests in the interview seat often is the She's So Lucky podcast. You might know it as Balanced Black Girl, and the host's name is Les. And she has a mix of solo episodes when it makes sense, when it's her perspective, but then she also has interviews with people like Gabrielle Union and Anwar White when they are talking about either experiences or expertise that only they have, or they have in their own unique ways that she wants to leverage. So the question to ask yourself is, are you open to letting the form fit the function instead of boxing yourself into any one specific format of a podcast that you might not be happy about a year from now? And this brings us to step number 1. This is the foundational piece that you have to master before you start thinking about the tech or the music or actually sitting down to record. And I know most of us want to make the show that we want to make, but I promise you, you will feel frustrated about your download numbers, about your impact, and whether you're actually reaching the people you want to reach, unless you get super clear on who you're solving a problem for, what problem you're solving, and who you are in relation to this journey that your listener is going through, okay? So Who you're solving your problem for, that is your listener. What problem you're solving is the core, the topic of your podcast. And then who you are in relation to this journey that you're taking your listener on. Maybe you are a guide who has a lot of expertise on the subject. And an example of that is my student Maxine, who is a nurse practitioner. She's making a podcast for people who got diagnosed with cancer. And she has the right to do that because she was an oncology nurse practitioner and has decades of experience in the field. So is that the approach you want to take, where you're like, listen, you have a problem, I have some answers, let's go? Or are you the friend, the colleague, the cousin who's like, hey, we both have some questions and I'd love for us to answer them together. So let's go on this exploration. Let's go on this journey together. And you might at this point be asking, well, what if it's just an entertainment podcast? Someone asked that in a comment in a previous video. And entertainment, I know, seems frivolous, but think about how much money is in the entertainment industry. Entertainment is definitely solving a problem, whether it's a podcast or a movie or a book. Entertainment is a category because people want to escape their lives, because people want to feel connected to other people who are curious about the same things, because people want to laugh, because people want to be entertained. So if you're making an entertainment podcast, you're definitely solving a problem. You just need to get clear on what your unique approach to solving that problem is. Let's say you're a comedian, you need to be clear on how you are doing that, okay? And when you're doing that, maybe you decide that you want to write out what 12 episodes of your podcast could sound like, or what topics you might want to cover over the course of your podcast. That's called writing a season outline. You can absolutely do that. We have a video on exactly how to do that here. If you decide that, hey, I actually don't want to go into the details of that, I really just want to record my first episode, that's totally fine too. We're going to talk about that next, but at least have a very clear sense of what problem you're solving so that your podcast is not all over the place and so that it actually connects with people who are looking for what you are putting out. All right, so we have thought big picture. So now we're gonna zoom all the way in on episode 1. And the problem that often arises for people is that they start talking about what they care about without a lot of concern for the structure. I'm not really rigid on structure, but I do think it's very helpful to have at least a brief outline of how you're going to guide the conversation. That's what I do with all of these YouTube videos, by the way. I have a script that guides me through where I'm going to go from one step to another. And the same thing is true for your podcast. In fact, if you want to dive deep into how to write a script, we have this video right here, which is the highest performing video on this channel, which is such a surprise to me, but good to know. And if you do nothing else, if you never watched that video, the most important thing I want you to take away from how to prepare the structure of your episode is that you need to start the episode with something that connects to your audience immediately. Your first 90 seconds are extremely important. So maybe you start with a problem or a question or a core tension that your listener has, and then you spend the rest of the episode exploring that topic. And then by the time you finish your episode, they should feel different than how they felt when they came in. Maybe they feel more entertained. Maybe they feel lighter, or maybe they feel more knowledgeable, or maybe they feel less anxious because they listened to you share your ideas and your exploration on a topic. And sticking with the same example we started with earlier, let's look at the She's So Lucky podcast. Earlier this year, or actually December 31st, 2024, she published an episode called Plan With Me for 2025, creating a plan to reach your goals. And the question she's really starting with here is a question a lot of her listeners have, which is, how do I have a better year than the one I just had? And over the course of the episode, she walks you through her personal planning process and how she plans to have a better 2025. And by the end, you feel more knowledgeable, more empowered, and like you can do something that can shift the trajectory of what your next year looks like. Okay? I hope this makes sense and you're sticking with me. Let's go into step 3. Now we're at the part that most people jump into before doing all of the steps that you have just done. And I promise you, you did those steps, which is what's going to make your podcast have longevity instead of just starting in the messy middle and then being confused about why people don't actually listen to your podcast, okay? Okay. Now, the question of what tools should I be using is where everyone jumps in. And the truth is, the two things you're always balancing when you're starting is affordability and quality. And I have some very clear answers for you on this. And actually, we have a full video on how to record a high quality podcast from your house. So if you haven't watched that, you might want to watch that to get a deep dive on this. First things first, the microphone. So I typically recommend that everybody use a Blue Yeti Nano. If you haven't bought a mic yet, that's the one that I would recommend you buy, or the Audio-Technica AT2020. Both of those are great because they're USB mics that plug directly into your computer, and you can just get started with recording instead of having to worry about how to use an interface, which some mics require before they plug into your computer. And both of these mics are around the $100 mark if you're in the US. And then for software, if you're making an audio-only podcast, you can start with something as simple as the voice memo app on your computer or GarageBand or Audacity. These are all completely free. But if you are ready to invest a little bit of money, then I would recommend that you start with a tool like Descript. That's what I'm recording into right now, so that the audio you're hearing is coming from my Blue Yeti mic and it's being recorded directly into Descript, which looks something like this. So this is the transcript that is coming out of Descript. This is the audio file that you are hearing, and the mic, as you saw, is right here. Okay, so I love Descript because I just think it's the best AI-driven tool that helps you edit and helps you transcribe and edit your podcast, which just reduces the barrier to editing in such a dramatic way. Okay, trying to edit by ear only using Audacity or GarageBand, I think, is actually going to be the reason why most people either edit really poorly or they don't edit their podcasts at all. And I don't know, I'm not anti a raw podcast, but I don't know. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Give me a little spice, you know what I mean? Give me a little cleanup, give me a little music. And I just think Descript is the easiest way to do that. Another platform that you can record on and edit on is Riverside. I am a fan of Riverside. The only reason I recommend Descript over Riverside is because Descript is a much better editor, although I will say Riverside is a much better tool to record with. The interface is just way nicer. And not to mention, if you are paying for Descript, you also get access to SquadCast, which basically is the same as Riverside. And you can do interviews on SquadCast if you want to. You can record yourself on SquadCast, but for solo podcasters, you could just record yourself directly into Descript, and then your transcript is right there. If you decide you want to edit today, you can edit today. What's not to love? Come on. And my final note on recording like a pro is to sound like yourself. And even when you write your script, write like you speak. Don't write like a pro. Don't write like someone else. You want to write the way you speak so that you come off as conversational as possible. All right? All right. Now that you have recorded and edited your first podcast, you are wondering, how do I publish and actually get it to places like Apple and Spotify? And here's what I recommend to all of my students, okay? First things first, we want you to have anywhere from 3 to 5 episodes ready before you publish. And that's because first, you want to publish with at least 3 episodes so that platforms like Apple and Spotify know that people, when they come to your podcast, they have something to binge and therefore will stay on their platforms for longer. The second piece is if you have 5 episodes, you are always going to be at least a couple of episodes ahead of time. I know my editor is laughing as she hears this because we're recording the episode this week. Don't do as I do as I say, okay? Now, how do you actually get your podcast on platforms like Apple, Spotify, even YouTube podcasts? You want to get your podcast on a podcast hosting platform. So That is essentially like your podcast's home base. You're going to put the audio file in this home base, and then that home base is going to have an RSS feed, which is going to distribute your podcast to every platform where you say you want it to be heard. Now, my recommendation to all of my students is to host their podcasts on Substack when they're starting. And this is because Substack, yes, it's a newsletter platform first, but it allows you to have a newsletter for your podcast. It allows you to have a landing page for your podcast, and it is completely free. And I just think this is so smart because you could pay for a platform like Libsyn or Buzzsprout or Captivate or Transistor, and you could have a website for your podcast, and you could have a newsletter. But you would be paying for three things when you're creating something completely new, which you're paying not just in money, but also in your time invested in keeping all three things up to date. But if you use Substack, it's just really quick, simple, and completely free. So I love that for you, and I love that for every single one of my students. And once you've uploaded your podcast to Substack, it's gonna give you an RSS feed that you can then take to Apple, and that it will push out to Spotify and YouTube podcasts, etc. And it will tell you, I'm pretty sure, Substack has instructions on how to actually get your podcast on the different platforms once you've hosted your podcast there. And if it doesn't, let me know and I'll make a video for you on exactly how to do that, okay? Once you hit publish, now we're done, right? Once you hit publish, you might feel like, all right, my job here is done. Not yet. This is actually just the beginning of a conversation with your listeners. When you put a piece of content out into the internet, like I'm doing for you right now, that is a bid for connection. And the conversation only begins if I invite you to engage with me, to leave a comment, to leave a reply, so that I can continue to engage with you in a real and meaningful way. And the same thing is true for your podcast. What most people do is they post and then they go about their life and then they feel frustrated that their download numbers are low. And then before you know it, they doubt their whole idea and they just abandon the whole thing. But not you, my friend. You have spent time thinking so much about the content that now, by the time your podcast is out there, you can actually focus on connection. And I just think that's such a smart way to set yourself up. So here are the things that I want you to focus on once you've hit publish. First things first, include a clear call to action at the end of every single episode. Tell people what to do once they're done listening to your show. Should they DM you on Instagram? Should they take a screenshot of the show that they just listened to and tag you? Should they sign up for your newsletter and then respond to it, letting you know what they thought of the episode? Whatever it is, tell them what you want them to do, okay? And while we're on this page, you can also ask them to follow your podcast and rate and review it and explain to them why that's important. So you can say something like, hey, if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It really helps other people like you find the show and find value from it as well. I will see you in the next episode, okay? Just like that, okay? So that's one thing. Your call to action, we want her sparkly. We want her to really come to life. And the call to action is only something they're going to hear if they came to your podcast in the first place. So how do we get them to come to your podcast in the first place? That relies on two things. The first is keywords and SEO. So we want to make sure that your podcast has the right keywords in it so that people who are searching for those keywords will actually come to your show. And I'll give you an example. In the podcast we were talking about earlier with Les and She's So Lucky, the keywords that I saw that I loved were: we'll reflect on 2024, learn from our lessons, craft a clear game plan for the year ahead, practical ways to set goals, build habits, prioritize rest, and get you your best year yet with a solid strategy. So these are all words that she has put in her show notes so that anyone who's searching for those things in December, which is a lot of people, she's gonna capture, okay? So your SEO, your keywords, they really matter. The other thing that really matters is that you actually put yourself intentionally in front of the right audience. So what you want to do is pitch yourself as a guest on a podcast where your audience is already hanging out. If you know your audience are overachievers who want to set goals for 2026 in September of 2025, then you need to know where the overachievers are hanging out, okay? And then you want to set yourself up to be a guest on that podcast well ahead of December. So if you do these things, if your call to action is really strong, if you're asking people to rate and review your podcast, if you are using SEO that is friendly to your audience, and if you are getting on other people's podcasts, I promise you, babe, there is no reason why your podcast will not reach the right audience. And if you have watched this whole video and you're like, I'm loving what I'm learning, then I promise you, you will love the Emerging Voices Podcasting Accelerator. It's an invite-only program for really brilliant minds, really brilliant people who have a podcast idea, but just feel afraid of putting their voice out there, or like the tech is too overwhelming, or they're just not sure how to get started on their own. I would love to help you bring your podcast idea to life. You can click the link below to schedule a free discovery call with me. If you're not quite ready for that kind of support, but you want to learn more, then you will want to download the 10-step guide to launching your podcast. Now, leave a comment below and tell me, what else would you like to see a video about? I can't wait to see you in next week's video.